Hi everybody, I want to thank you for connecting with me today. I really do hope that our time together is of benefit to you. I hope it actually makes a difference in your life, So you know that we're in the series on the parables, looking at these stories that Jesus told, these very simple but really profound and powerful stories that Jesus told. And we've been talking about how these simple stories actually apply to our lives, and if we actually lived it out, the difference that it would make. And we're going to see that this parable today has, we're talking about the kingdom of God today. And there are a section of the 33 different parables that Jesus told. A section of them, Jesus talked about the kingdom of God. In fact, in 7 different parables, 7 of the 33, Jesus talked about the kingdom of God. And Jesus was trying to use these simple everyday images to try to describe to us what the kingdom of God would be like. And today we'll look at Mark chapter 4, verses 26 to 32. But before we look at this parable, I think we need to just stop for a moment to talk about the kingdom of God, to try to define what it is and kind of have a bit of an image or something in our minds. So what is the kingdom of God? I think that maybe the best way to answer that question is to ask another question. Okay, so here's the question. What would it look like if the way of Jesus prevailed in our world today? What would it look like if the way of Jesus prevailed in our world today? Really, when you think about it, that's a loaded question and one that you could really spend a lot of time thinking through all the different layers of that. In Matthew chapter 6, verse 10, Jesus, when he was teaching us to pray, he said, he was praying to the Father, Father, may your will be done. May your kingdom come, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So listen to this. The kingdom of God, may your kingdom, the kingdom of God come, and may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So the question that I asked is, what would it look like if the way of Jesus prevailed in our world today? And maybe another way of wording that would be, what would it look like if the will of God was done on earth as it is in heaven? What would it look like if earth was a mirror image of heaven, right? What would it look like if earth was a mirror image of heaven? There's so many different layers to that. There's both a personal aspect to that and a community aspect, a world aspect to that, So if the way of Jesus prevailed in my life and in every human's life around the world, then we would treat each other with the love and respect and dignity that human beings deserve, right? We would, all systems of oppression, people oppressing each other, and this speaks to power dynamics, people oppressing each other or systems that oppress people, all of that oppression would go away if the way of Jesus prevailed, in our world today. And so, in other words, all governments, would operate to serve the people. And we see so many examples of governments around the world that are oppressive, they're corrupt, they're serving the politicians, but not serving the people, right? So governments would exist to serve for the benefit of the people. Listen to this, corporations would exist for the benefit of the people. I know that corporations wouldn't exist to make a lot of money for a very few number of people. Corporations would exist to benefit people and to share the wealth, right? If the way of Jesus really existed or really prevailed, our judicial system would operate and justice would actually prevail, right? So on so many different levels. And I even thought this week, that if the way of Jesus really prevailed and all of these systems came into order, then our Earth's environment would come back into order. In fact, the Bible talks about that Earth's environment would come back into balance, and the problems that we're seeing with climate change would all come back into balance. So you see that if the way of Jesus really prevailed, I mean, it's hard for us to really understand, to wrap our head around, but if the way of Jesus really prevailed, then personally we would treat each other with love and respect. Governments would operate differently. Corporations would operate differently. Our environment would operate differently. When the way of Jesus prevails, life would be really, really good for every single human being, right? Let me just say a couple more things about the kingdom of God before we look at this parable. I think the simplest definition of the kingdom of God is that the kingdom of God is the rule of God. The kingdom of God is the rule of God. So if God ruled, what would it look like, right? And we're not talking about oppression, like governments ruling and oppressing, but if the kingdom of God ruled, what would it look like? And I've already referred to this, that the kingdom of God is both a personal thing, that the kingdom of God rules in my life, but it's also a community thing where the kingdom of God, rules in varying degrees in our society today. And along those lines, one last thought, that the kingdom of God is both a present reality and a future hope. A present reality and a future hope. So when Jesus came to earth, was born, lived on earth, and gave his life on the cross, he came to establish the kingdom of God. And so there's an aspect where the kingdom of God exists today, in the followers of Jesus. But we don't see the kingdom of God fully established in our government, in our world today because of sin, right? But there is coming a day when the kingdom of God, the rule of Jesus, will prevail 100%, and in the world, in all of humanity, the kingdom of God. So it's both a present reality and a future hope. It's already and not yet, right? Okay, so let's jump in then to the parable that Jesus told. So Jesus, I'm going to skip down to verse 30 here as a setup, but Jesus said, how can I describe the kingdom of God? What story should I use to illustrate it, right? So I love how Jesus is kind of thinking out loud here, and he's like, how can I describe the kingdom of God to you? And he tells these two parables. First, in Mark 4:26, Jesus also said, the kingdom of God is like a farmer who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, while he's asleep or awake, the seed sprouts and grows, but he does not understand how it happens. The earth produces the crops on its own. First, a leaf blade pushes through, then the heads of wheat are formed, and finally the grain ripens. And as soon as the grain is ready, the farmer comes and harvests it with a sickle, for the harvest time has come. And then he goes on in verse 30, what I just quoted. Jesus said, how can I describe the kingdom of God? What story should I use to illustrate it? It's like a mustard seed planted in the ground. It's the smallest of all seeds, but it becomes the largest of all garden plants. It grows long branches, and birds can make nests in its shade. On Sunday, we'll have a conversation about, what these two parables speak to you about the kingdom of God. But I'd like to just share a few of my thoughts, if I can. Let me begin with what Jesus said in verse 31 about the mustard seed. He said it's the smallest of all seeds, but it becomes the largest of all garden plants. I think the nature of seed, Jesus is saying here, the kingdom of God is like seed, right? And the nature of seed is that it looks unassuming. Nobody says, wow, that seed is so beautiful. I'm going to frame that seed and put it on the wall. It's going to make fantastic artwork. No, I mean, seed is just seed, right? It looks unassuming. And it's what Jesus said in verse 31. The mustard seed is the smallest of all seeds. And in a similar way, the kingdom of God, it looks very unassuming, right? The kingdom of God today, if you really boil it down, it's individual lives like you and me, living our daily lives, right? Just serving Jesus and loving him and doing our best, right? The kingdom of God, it looks unassuming in our daily lives. We don't wake up and go, wow, it's so amazing. My life is so amazing. I want to put a picture of it on the wall. No, it's pretty unassuming. But the kingdom of God packs a punch, right? Jesus said the mustard seed is small, but it becomes the biggest plant. And in the same way, the mustard seed, the kingdom of God today, might look small in my life and your life, but one day when it becomes fully established, when the seed grows to full maturity, it's going to sure will make a difference, right? So the kingdom of God looks unassuming now, but when it's fully established, it's going to be a thing, right? When we all get to heaven, and yeah. So that's my first thought. The seed looks unassuming, but it packs a punch. My second thought is that seed grows. Seed grows. In Mark 4:27, night and day, while the farmer is asleep or awake, the seed sprouts and grows, but he does not understand how it happens. I love just the interesting image that Jesus gave there. Given the proper conditions, a seed will grow, right? It's built into the DNA of a seed. It just will grow given the proper conditions. And in the same way, the kingdom of God will grow, right? There are times in, that especially through history and in different parts of the world especially, there are times when it sure seems like the kingdom of God, in North America today, it sure seems like the kingdom of God is not growing very much. But friends, let me assure you, the kingdom of God will move forward. It's built into the DNA of it, just like built into the DNA of a seed, that the kingdom of God will keep moving forward, even when we can't see it, right? And I think that's especially pertinent for us in North America. And we'll talk about this in just a moment, but the North American church, well, let me talk about it now, actually. In North America, the North American church, seems to be not growing, right? Not having much of an effect, not being very effective. And so how do we put together these two facts that Jesus said the kingdom of God will grow? It will continue to move forward until it sees full fruition, one day in the future. But how we put that together with, what we see, right? And that'll be an interesting conversation on Sunday. How do we kind of, put those two things together? Final thought, really quickly. First, that the kingdom of God looks unassuming, but it sure does pack a punch. Second thought is in verse 27, that the seed grows and the kingdom of God will grow. It will move forward. It's Jesus's kingdom and he will make sure that it moves forward. And then my final thought is that seed produces fruit. And this might be the most significant thing that Jesus was trying to say. Again, in verses 28 and 29 of Mark 4, the earth produces crops on its own. First the leaf blade pushes through, then the heads of wheat are formed, and then finally the grain ripens. And as soon as the grain is ready, the farmer comes and harvests it with a sickle, for the harvest time has come, right? The kingdom of God produces fruit. And there's both a personal and a community aspect to that. both personally. I can look at my own life, and I'm sure you can look at your life and see the difference that the kingdom of God, the rule of Jesus, has made in our lives, right? In the just the shalom. Maybe that's the best way to put it. The shalom with God that has been brought into our lives because of the kingdom of God, but also in society, the kingdom of God. And I know that quite often, our society looks pretty dark, and they're the evil force that, that's fighting against. But think about what it would be like if there was no force of good in our society, right? And so in society, when the kingdom of God, in fact, in a few weeks, or maybe next year sometime, I'd like to do a book series on Lisa Sharon Harper's book, The Very Good Gospel. And I think maybe, like I said, we'll do a series on this in the future. The Very Good Gospel. She talks about shalom, the kingdom of God bringing shalom, and what that looks like in people and in families, what shalom looks like in an environment, what shalom looks like in government and corporations, what shalom looks like in racial shalom. So maybe we'll do that in the next little while. So what kind of fruit does the kingdom of God produce? There's a personal element, there's a society element, but then ultimately the kingdom of God in eternity will produce, total shalom in heaven. And let me finish by reading Revelation 21. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people." This is when the kingdom of God will fully be established. God's home is now among his people. Those are powerful words. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. Listen to verse 4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. Friends, when the kingdom of God is fully established one day, it's something that we can look forward to, that there will be no more death, no more crying, no more pain, no more suffering. All these things are gone forever. Okay? Our time is up, but I look forward to having this conversation with you on Sunday if you can be with us at Latcham Hall. 10 o'clock, food is served. At 10:30, we'll transition to worship, and this teaching again I'll give, and we'll have a conversation about it, okay? God bless you, friends. I hope you have a fantastic day.